Hey everyone, welcome back to the English Hour. I'm Sophia, and today we have a fresh and exciting episode for you. We're diving into something that's been on the minds of many learners: how to stay motivated in your language journey. And joining me today is my awesome guest. Welcome back, Jacob.
Hey Sophia, great to be here again. I'm excited to talk about motivation, as it's such a crucial part of any learning process, especially when it comes to a language.
Absolutely, motivation is key, but it's also something that can be tough to keep up, right? Sometimes you might start strong, but after a while, things can slow down. So, how do you stay motivated when learning English, Jacob?
That's a great question. For me, it really helps to have clear goals. Whether it's learning 10 new words a day or finishing a chapter in a book, having specific targets makes it feel more like a journey with progress rather than just a big mountain to climb.
I totally agree. Having goals helps break down the process into smaller, more manageable steps. It gives you that sense of achievement every time you hit a milestone, which keeps you motivated. What about you, listeners? Have you set any language learning goals for yourself?
Yeah, and sometimes it's also about mixing things up to keep things fresh. If you do the same thing every day, like memorizing vocabulary, it can start feeling like a chore. So, I like to switch it up. Maybe I'll watch a show in English, listen to a podcast, or even try writing a short story. It keeps the learning fun and interesting.
That's a great tip, Jacob. Mixing things up not only keeps it interesting, but it also gives you a broader perspective on the language. And let's not forget about the power of rewards. Do you reward yourself when you hit those learning milestones?
Absolutely, I think rewards are a powerful motivator. After achieving a goal, whether big or small, it's important to give yourself something to look forward to. It could be a little treat, a break, or even something more meaningful, like watching your favorite show in English. It's all about celebrating progress, no matter how small it seems.
That's such a great mindset. Rewards can make the journey more enjoyable and give you that extra push. And speaking of progress, one thing I've noticed is that the more you practice, the more you start to feel comfortable in the language. Have you noticed that in your own learning, Jacob?
Oh, definitely, I think consistency is key here. The more you expose yourself to English, whether you're reading, speaking, or listening, the more natural it becomes. It's like anything else, muscle memory, and over time, the language starts to feel more like a part of you, rather than something you have to work at.
That's such a great point. Consistency really is the secret to making progress. It's not about doing something perfectly from the start. It's about doing it regularly and building over time. And hey, for all of you listening out there, if you're feeling a little discouraged, just remember, every bit of practice is a step forward.
Exactly, and don't be afraid of making mistakes, either. Mistakes are a part of the learning process. It's how we grow, and it's how we get better. So, embrace them. You'll be surprised at how much you can learn from the errors along the way.
That's such an important message. Mistakes are just opportunities to learn. And with that positive mindset, I think anyone can stay motivated. What about you, listeners? How do you stay motivated when learning English? Let us know your tips and tricks.
Yeah, we'd love to hear from you. Everyone's journey is different, and we can all learn from each other's experiences. Keep practicing and keep pushing forward. You got this?
Exactly. All right, listeners, let's keep this conversation going in the next episode. Until then, stay motivated, keep practicing, and enjoy the process. Catch you next time. I'm glad we're continuing this, Jacob. Let's dive a bit deeper. Sometimes, learners hit that wall where it feels like they're not improving as fast as they'd like. Have you ever had that experience?
Oh, for sure. I think everyone goes through that phase at some point. You put in the effort, you study, and yet it feels like you're stuck. It can be really frustrating. But the thing I've learned is that growth isn't always linear. Some days you'll feel like you're making huge strides, and other days it feels like you're taking 2 steps back. But that's all part of the process.
Absolutely. It's important to remember that even when you feel stuck, you're still moving forward. Sometimes growth happens in those quiet moments, when you're not seeing immediate results. But later on, you'll realize how much progress you've actually made.
That's so true. It's like working out. You don't see muscles growing overnight, but if you stick with it, you start seeing the results later. It's the same with language learning. One day, you'll realize you're understanding more, speaking with more confidence, and making fewer mistakes.
Exactly. And one of the things that can help push through those tough times is a support system. Do you think it's important to have someone to practice with? Jacob.
Oh, for sure, having someone to practice with can really keep you motivated. It doesn't matter if it's a friend, a language partner, or even someone online. It's great to have someone to share the journey with, and it helps make the learning process less lonely.
I couldn't agree more. I think when you practice with someone, it adds a fun social element to the process. It's also a great way to keep yourself accountable. Plus, you get to learn from each other.
Yes, and sometimes it's just nice to hear someone else's perspective. They might have a different approach or technique that could work for you. You never know until you try.
That's right. And it doesn't always have to be formal practice, either. Sometimes casual conversations, even about small things, can really help you improve. Plus, it's a lot less pressure, which makes it more enjoyable.
Yeah, like chatting about movies, books, or even daily life. You're still learning the language, but in a much more relaxed way. It's these kinds of conversations that make a language feel real and practical.
I love that. And speaking of casual conversations, let's talk about real life situations. Have you ever found that the language you learn in textbooks is a bit different from how people actually speak?
All 100%. Textbooks teach you the formal, proper version of a language, but in real life, people speak more casually with slang and idiomatic expressions. That can be tricky at first, but it's also one of the most exciting parts of learning a language. You start to hear and use phrases that are more natural and authentic.
Definitely. It's like unlocking the secret language that native speakers use every day. But it can be a little intimidating at first. How do you recommend tackling that, Jacob?
One thing I found helpful is to watch TV shows, movies, or even YouTube videos in the target language. You get to hear how people speak in real-world situations, and it's a fun way to learn. Plus, you pick up on those little expressions or ways of saying things that you wouldn't get from a textbook.
Great tip. Watching content in English, especially with subtitles, helps you hear natural speech patterns and accents. And over time, you start recognizing those expressions and phrases without even thinking about it.
Exactly, and don't be afraid to mimic what you hear. Even if it feels a little awkward at first, you'll get the hang of it. It's all part of sounding more natural when you speak.
Yes, so, to everyone listening, if you ever feel like your language skills are stuck, try mixing things up with some real-world content. It'll help you break through those walls and make learning a lot more fun and practical.
Absolutely keep practicing, keep trying new things, and don't forget to enjoy the process. Language learning is a journey, and every step counts.
That's the spirit. We'll continue diving into more tips and strategies in our next episode. Until then, keep learning and remember, don't be afraid to make mistakes. And keep having fun with the language. Catch you next time. I'm really glad we're continuing this, Jacob. You've shared so many great insights already. Let's talk about something that many learners struggle with: making mistakes. How did you come to terms with making mistakes while learning a language?
Mistakes. That's a big one, right? At first, I was terrified of making them. I'd be so focused on saying everything perfectly that I'd freeze up. But over time, I realized that mistakes are part of the learning process. They're actually how you learn. When you make a mistake and get corrected, it sticks with you and you improve.
Exactly. It's so important to embrace those mistakes. It's like the more you make, the more you learn. But it can still be tough, especially if you feel embarrassed or self-conscious. How do you stay motivated to keep going, even when things don't go as planned?
Honestly, it's all about changing your mindset. I try to remind myself that no one speaks perfectly all the time. Everyone makes mistakes, even native speakers. It's okay to mess up, and the key is to keep going. The more you practice, the more confident you become, and you'll get better little by little.
Such a great point. And one thing that really helps is to focus on communication rather than perfection. It's not about saying every word perfectly, but about getting your message across and connecting with others. How has that shift in focus helped you?
It's been huge for me. When I stopped worrying so much about being perfect, I started enjoying speaking more. And the funny thing is, my speaking improved faster because I wasn't holding myself back anymore. I wasn't afraid to try new things or experiment with the language.
That's a really inspiring way to approach it. Once you let go of that fear, you start moving forward without overthinking every word. And I think the most rewarding part is when you can finally have those real conversations and connect with people.
Exactly, there's nothing like the feeling of having a conversation and realizing that you understand and can express yourself. It's a huge confidence boost. It makes all those little mistakes worth it in the end.
Absolutely. And even though we're talking about making mistakes, I think it's just as important to recognize your progress. It can be easy to focus on what you don't know. But when you look back at how far you've come, it's pretty amazing. Do you ever take time to reflect on your journey, Jacob?
Definitely. Sometimes I'll look back at old recordings of myself speaking, and it's crazy to see how much I've improved. At the time, I didn't realize how much I was learning, but when I compare it to where I am now, it's pretty motivating. I think everyone should take a moment to appreciate the progress they've made, no matter how small it seems.
That's such a great idea. Reflecting on how far you've come can really boost your confidence and motivation. It's easy to forget how much you've learned when you're focused on the next step. But those little victories matter too.
Absolutely. Every step counts. And don't forget to celebrate those small wins along the way. Whether it's having a smooth conversation or finally understanding a tricky grammar rule, those moments add up and make a big difference in your language journey.
Yes, it's all about celebrating the little victories. So, to everyone listening, keep making progress, keep practicing, and remember, don't be too hard on yourself when you make mistakes. They're just stepping stones to mastering the language.
That's right, keep moving forward, keep practicing, and enjoy the journey. Language learning isn't a race, it's a process. And every moment you spend learning is valuable.
Couldn't have said it better myself. We'll be back next time with more tips and advice to help you on your language learning journey. But for now, keep practicing, and we'll see you in the next episode. I'm glad we're continuing, Jacob. Now, let's dive into a topic that a lot of language learners struggle with: staying consistent. It's easy to get excited about learning at first, but then life gets in the way. How do you keep your learning routine going, even when it feels tough?
That's a great question, Sophia. Honestly, staying consistent has been one of the biggest challenges for me. At first, I would get really motivated, but then life would happen, and I'd skip a day, then another, and before I knew it, I'd fallen out of my routine. But what really helped was setting small, realistic goals. Instead of saying, I'll study for 2 hours every day, I started with just 10 minutes. Even on the busiest days, I could find 10 minutes to review vocabulary or listen to a podcast.
That's such a smart strategy. Starting small makes it feel more manageable. It's easier to stick to when it doesn't feel overwhelming. And I think the key is to stay consistent with even those little efforts. Over time, they add up to big progress.
Exactly. And another thing that helped me stay consistent was tracking my progress. Whether it's keeping a journal, marking off days on a calendar, or using an app, seeing that streak of days where I've studied or practiced makes me want to keep it going. It gives you that sense of accomplishment, even if the progress seems slow at times.
I love that idea. Tracking your progress can be such a great motivator. It gives you something tangible to look at and makes you feel proud of what you've accomplished. And I think it also helps to remind yourself why you're learning in the first place. When you connect your language, learning to a bigger goal or purpose, it makes it easier to stay motivated.
That's so true. For me, I always remind myself that learning a new language opens up new opportunities, whether it's traveling, meeting new people, or just understanding different cultures better. When I think about those reasons, it helps me keep going even on the days when I feel unmotivated.
That's such a powerful reminder. Language learning isn't just about memorizing words, it's about connecting to the world in new ways. And on the days when you feel like giving up, those bigger goals can really keep you going.
Definitely. And I think it's also important to be kind to yourself when you miss a day or fall off track. Life happens and it's okay. The important part is to get back on track and keep moving forward. Every day is a new chance to keep learning and improving.
Yes, that's such an important mindset to have. Don't be too hard on yourself. It's all part of the journey, and every step, even the setbacks, is a chance to learn something new.
Exactly. The key is to keep at it. Consistency doesn't mean perfection, it just means showing up, even when you don't feel like it. And eventually, those little efforts add up to real progress.
Couldn't agree more. It's all about the journey and staying consistent. So, to everyone listening, keep showing up, even on the tough days. Remember, small efforts over time lead to big results. Stay motivated, keep practicing, and keep pushing forward.
Yes, keep going and don't give up. The progress may not always be immediate, but every bit of effort counts, and before you know it, you'll be amazed by how much you've learned.
That's the spirit. We'll see you in the next episode, where we'll talk more about overcoming obstacles in language learning and how to stay motivated. Keep practicing and keep enjoying the process. I'm so glad we're keeping this going, Jacob. You've shared such great tips so far. Let's dive a little deeper into motivation. When things get tough, how do you keep that drive alive, especially when you feel like you're not seeing progress?
Oh, that's a tough one. We all have those days when we feel like we're stuck in a rut, right? For me, it's all about remembering the small victories. When I get frustrated, I think back to where I started, when I couldn't even understand a basic conversation. And now, even though I might not be fluent yet, I can hold a basic conversation, understand movies, or read articles in the language. Celebrating those small wins really helps me push through the tough moments.
That's a fantastic way to look at it. Sometimes we're so focused on the end goal that we forget to appreciate how far we've come. Those small wins really are the milestones that show us we're progressing, even when it doesn't feel like it.
Exactly. And another thing I do is mix up my study routine. Sometimes I feel like I'm not improving because I'm just doing the same thing every day, like reading the same kind of texts or listening to the same podcasts. So I try to switch it up. I'll watch a movie in the language or even try singing along to a song. It keeps things fresh and reminds me that language learning doesn't always have to be formal or structured. It can be fun too.
I love that approach. Keeping it fun and engaging is such a great way to prevent burnout, and it makes it feel less like a chore. Plus, when you're doing things you enjoy, like watching movies or singing along, it doesn't feel as hard, but you're still learning.
Definitely. And I also find that when I step out of my comfort zone and try new things, like speaking with native speakers or participating in language exchange groups, it really gives me a sense of accomplishment. Even if I make mistakes, just trying and having those conversations makes me feel like I'm progressing.
That's so true. It's all about pushing yourself a little bit further each time. Even the uncomfortable moments like making mistakes are part of the learning process. The more you practice speaking and engaging with others, the more natural it becomes.
Absolutely. And speaking of making mistakes, I think it's really important not to be afraid of them. Every time I make a mistake, I remind myself that I'm learning. Those mistakes are stepping stones to improvement. Plus, the people you're speaking with are usually more than happy to help you out or correct you, and that's how you grow.
That's such a great mindset to have. It's easy to get discouraged when we make mistakes. But really, they're just opportunities for growth. The more mistakes we make, the closer we get to fluency.
Exactly. I also think it's really important to enjoy the process rather than focusing too much on the end goal. Sometimes we get so fixated on being fluent that we forget to enjoy the journey itself. Language learning is a beautiful, ongoing experience, and every little step is worth celebrating.
I love that. Language learning is a lifelong journey, and it's all about enjoying the process. The more we can appreciate the little wins, the more motivated we'll stay, and the easier it will be to push through the tougher times.
Exactly. And speaking of the process, I think setting realistic goals is key. It's great to have big dreams, but breaking them down into smaller, achievable goals makes them feel more attainable. That way, you're always working towards something, and every goal you accomplish builds your confidence.
Yes, small goals are so much more manageable. Instead of saying, I want to be fluent by next year, try setting goals like, I want to learn 20 new words this week. Or, I want to hold a 5-minute conversation by the end of the month. These smaller goals keep you motivated and give you a sense of achievement along the way.
That's right. And when you achieve those smaller goals, it's a great confidence boost. It makes you realize that fluency is just a collection of small steps. It doesn't happen overnight, but with consistent effort, you'll get there.
Absolutely. And I think another great thing is finding a language learning community. Whether it's a study group, online forums, or even just chatting with friends who are learning the same language, being part of a community can really keep you motivated. You get to share your experiences, ask questions, and celebrate each other's progress.
That's such a good point. Um, uh, Having that support system really helps, especially when you're feeling down or like you're not making progress. Sometimes just hearing someone else's success story can reignite your own motivation.
Exactly. Language learning can be tough. But when you have a group of people cheering you on, it makes the journey feel so much more rewarding. It's also comforting to know that you're not alone in the struggle.
Yes, and you can learn so much from others too. Sometimes someone else's method might be exactly what you need to push through a learning block. You never know where you might find the next piece of the puzzle.
That's such an important reminder. Learning from others and sharing tips can really open up new possibilities. So, to everyone listening, remember that language learning is a journey. Celebrate the small wins, embrace the mistakes, and stay motivated. You've got this?
Absolutely keep at it, and don't forget to enjoy the ride. The progress might seem slow at times, but every effort is bringing you closer to your goal. Keep practicing, stay consistent, and remember it's all about enjoying the process.
Well said. Thanks for joining us today, Jacob. And to everyone listening, we'll see you in the next episode. Keep practicing, and we'll talk more about how to overcome those tough language learning challenges. Let's dive a bit deeper into something you mentioned earlier, Jacob, setting realistic goals. How do you go about setting those goals? For someone just starting their language learning journey, what would you recommend as a good first goal?
That's a great question, Sophia. When you're just starting out, it can feel overwhelming, right? But I think the key is to start small and build from there. A good first goal could be something like learning basic greetings or common phrases in the language. Something simple and achievable that will give you a sense of accomplishment early on. Once you've got that down, you can move on to bigger goals like learning the alphabet or mastering essential grammar rules.
I love that idea. It's all about breaking it down into bite-sized pieces. It can be easy to think, I want to be fluent in a year. But realistically, fluency comes over time. The smaller victories really help build your confidence along the way.
Exactly. And it's also important to keep track of your progress. A lot of people don't realize how much they've learned because they don't stop to reflect on it. If you keep a journal or a log of new words or phrases you've learned each week, you'll see how much you're actually improving. It's a great way to stay motivated.
That's such a smart strategy. Sometimes, when we're caught up in the day To day grind of studying, it's easy to forget how far we've come. But looking back at that log and seeing all the new words and expressions you've learned can be such a huge confidence booster.
Absolutely. And speaking of tracking progress, I also recommend setting goals around speaking practice. Even if it's just for 5 minutes a day, speaking is the hardest skill to improve, and it's often the area where learners feel the least confident. But the more you practice, even in small doses, the more natural it will become.
That's a really good point. A lot of people shy away from speaking because they're afraid of making mistakes. But as we've talked about before, mistakes are part of the process. The more you practice speaking, the better you'll get. It's all about building that comfort and confidence.
Exactly. And there's also the added benefit of learning pronunciation and accent when you practice speaking. It's amazing how much better your speaking will get just by having daily conversations, even if you're not fluent yet. It's about consistency.
And what about listening practice? How do you suggest integrating that into the learning routine?
Great question. Listening is such a critical skill. At first, it can be tough, especially if the language sounds so different from your own. But what I like to do is listen to content that interests me, whether that's podcasts, YouTube videos, or even music. It's easier to stay engaged when you're listening to something you enjoy. Plus, listening to content that's meant for native speakers will help you get used to the rhythm and flow of the language.
That's a fantastic strategy, and it doesn't even feel like studying because you're enjoying the content. Plus, you're learning how the language is actually used in everyday situations, not just what's in textbooks.
Exactly. I also recommend starting with content that's a little easier, maybe podcasts that are specifically aimed at language learners, before jumping straight into native level content. But once you feel comfortable, definitely try to immerse yourself in real life language. You'll be amazed at how much more you can understand after just a few weeks of listening practice.
Yeah, immersion is key, and even if you don't understand everything, it's okay. You're still absorbing the language, and little by little, it will start to make sense. It's all about staying patient and persistent.
Definitely, and one more thing, don't forget about reading practice. Whether it's simple books, articles, or even social media posts, reading exposes you to new vocabulary and grammar structures. It also helps with comprehension and speed. Plus, it's a great way to reinforce what you've learned through speaking and listening.
Absolutely. The more you expose yourself to the language in different ways, the faster you'll start picking it up. I think the key takeaway from all this is that language learning is a multi-faceted process. It's not just about memorizing vocabulary or grammar rules. It's about engaging with the language in as many ways as possible: speaking, listening, reading, and even writing.
Couldn't agree more. Language learning is about consistency, practice, and having fun with the process. The more you enjoy it, the more you'll stick with it, and the faster you'll see progress.
Well said, Jacob. And to everyone listening, remember, learning a language is all about taking those small steps every day. Keep practicing, stay motivated, and embrace the process. You'll get there, one step at a time.
Exactly. And remember to celebrate those small victories along the way. They all add up to big progress.
Thanks so much for joining me today, Jacob. And to everyone listening, we'll be back in the next episode with more tips and advice. Until then, keep learning and keep having fun with your language journey. One thing I wanted to touch on, Jacob, is how important it is to make language learning a habit. Do you have any tips for turning language practice into something that feels natural, like a daily routine?
Absolutely, Sophia, habits are the key to long-term success. A great way to make language learning a habit is to incorporate it into your daily routine. For example, if you have a morning coffee, why not listen to a podcast or watch a short video in the language you're learning while you drink it? It's a small thing, but it helps build consistency.
I love that idea. It's like you're combining something you already do with your language practice, which makes it feel less like an extra task. Even setting aside just 15 minutes a day can add up over time.
Exactly. Another thing I do is use language apps or flashcards during downtime, like while waiting for a bus or during lunch breaks. It's all about finding little pockets of time throughout the day and using them wisely. That way, you're not feeling overwhelmed by having to set aside a huge chunk of time for studying.
That's so practical. A lot of people think they need to dedicate hours to language learning. But in reality, consistency matters more than the amount of time spent. Even small daily doses can make a huge difference.
For sure. And I'd also say that having clear goals tied to your habit is really motivating. So, if you know you want to learn 20 new words this week or have a conversation in your target language by the end of the month, it gives you something to work toward and helps keep you on track.
Those are great suggestions. Setting short-term goals, like learning a set number of words or phrases, makes the process more manageable and rewarding. It helps prevent that feeling of being overwhelmed.
Definitely. And you mentioned something earlier about enjoying the process, which I think is key. If you're not enjoying it, it's hard to keep it up. So find things you love that involve the language. It could be cooking with a recipe in your target language, watching a TV show, or playing video games in the language. If it's fun, you're more likely to stick with it.
That's such an important point. When language learning feels like a chore, it's easy to lose motivation. But when you're doing things you genuinely enjoy, like watching movies or listening to music, it doesn't feel like studying at all.
Exactly. It's all about finding that balance between study and play. When you're using the language in ways that connect with you personally, it feels way more natural.
And there's another element to this too. It's okay to step out of your comfort zone. For instance, speaking with native speakers, or even joining online communities where you can practice the language is so important, right?
Oh, definitely. I always encourage people to take that leap and start speaking early on, even if they make mistakes. It can be intimidating, but that's where the real learning happens. Plus, native speakers will often appreciate the effort, and you'll get better faster.
That's so true. It's all about getting past that fear of making mistakes. Every mistake is just an opportunity to learn and improve. And in the end, people will appreciate your effort to communicate, no matter how imperfect it is.
Absolutely. And the more you practice speaking, the easier it gets. And with time, it will feel more natural, just like any other skill you're developing.
Well, Jacob, and speaking of time, as we've mentioned, consistency is key. Even if it's just a few minutes a day, those minutes add up to something meaningful.
Exactly. It's all about the small, daily actions that lead to big results. Language learning is a marathon, not a sprint.
Couldn't agree more. Thanks so much for sharing your thoughts today, Jacob. You've given us some really valuable tips.
It was my pleasure. Sophia, always great talking about language learning. Keep going, everyone, and remember, the more you immerse yourself in the language, the more you'll grow.
And to everyone listening, thank you for joining us today. Keep practicing, stay consistent, and most importantly, enjoy the journey. We'll catch you next time. So, Jacob, earlier we were talking about immersing yourself in the language and using daily activities as part of the learning process. I think one thing a lot of people struggle with is staying motivated when they don't see immediate results. What would you say to someone who feels like they're not making progress?
That's a great question, Sophia. I totally understand the frustration of not seeing immediate results. But language learning is a gradual process, and progress can sometimes be so slow that it's hard to notice. My advice is to focus on the small wins, like understanding a sentence that once felt confusing or being able to use a new word in conversation. Celebrate those little victories because they are signs of growth.
That's such an important point. We often overlook those small moments, but they truly add up. Sometimes, just being able to understand a new song lyric or recognize a word in a movie can make you realize how far you've come.
Exactly. And remember, learning a language isn't just about memorizing vocabulary. It's about building a relationship with the language. Every day you spend with it, you're becoming more familiar with its rhythm, its nuances, and its culture. So it's not always about quick results, it's about building a deeper connection.
I love that perspective. It's not just about acquiring knowledge, but about becoming more comfortable and confident with the language over time. And I think that's something a lot of learners forget. They're so focused on fluency that they don't appreciate the steps they've already taken.
Definitely. And it's okay to not be fluent right away. Fluency takes time and consistent effort. The key is to keep pushing even on the tough days. If you're consistent and keep putting in the effort, you will see progress.
That's so true. And I think it's also helpful to remember that fluency doesn't mean you'll never make mistakes. Everyone, even native speakers, makes mistakes. The goal is to keep learning and improving, not to be perfect.
Right, exactly. Language learning is all about communication. If you can express yourself and be understood, that's a huge accomplishment. Fluency comes naturally as you continue to practice and interact in the language.
I agree completely. It's about getting comfortable making mistakes and learning from them, rather than avoiding them. And I think that's one of the most rewarding aspects of the journey, the continuous growth.
Absolutely. And another thing that's really important is finding a community or group of people to learn with. Whether it's an online group or a language exchange partner, having someone to practice with can make a huge difference. It keeps you accountable and motivated.
Oh, for sure. Having that support system makes learning feel less isolating and much more fun. Plus, it opens up opportunities to learn from others, share tips, and celebrate wins together.
Exactly. And sometimes, just hearing someone else's language journey can remind you that you're not alone. Everyone faces challenges, but it's the persistence and dedication that make all the difference.
That's a great point. We often get caught up in comparing our progress to others, but everyone's path is different. What works for one person might not work for another, and that's perfectly okay.
Totally. Language learning is unique to each individual. The important thing is to keep going, keep trying new methods, and keep finding what works best for you.
Couldn't agree more. And on that note, I think it's important to recognize that there's no one-size-fits-all approach. Some people prefer immersion, others prefer structured lessons, and some might enjoy combining different methods. The key is to experiment and see what keeps you engaged.
Absolutely, the diversity of learning styles is what makes language learning so personal and dynamic. There's no single right way, just the way that works for you.
Well, thank you, Jacob, for these amazing insights. I think everyone listening will walk away with a renewed sense of motivation to keep pushing forward on their language learning journey.
It was my pleasure, Sophia. Keep going, everyone, and remember, no matter where you are in your journey, the most important thing is to enjoy the process. The results will follow naturally.
That's fantastic advice, and thank you all for tuning in today. Keep practicing, stay consistent, and remember, you're doing great. Until next time, keep learning and keep growing. And Jacob, before we wrap things up, let's dive into something a bit more personal. You mentioned earlier that you've been learning other languages too, right? Can you share a bit about how that experience has influenced your approach to learning English?
Sure, it's been really eye-opening. I've learned a few languages, and each one has taught me something different about the process. With each new language, I've realized that patience and persistence are the keys. The first language I learned was Spanish, and I remember feeling completely overwhelmed by the amount of new vocabulary. But then, as I kept practicing, it all started to click. It taught me the power of immersion and how exposure to the language in various forms can speed up learning. That helped me a lot when I started learning English more seriously.
That's so interesting. And I bet your experiences with other languages gave you a broader perspective on how to approach English. Sometimes, learning multiple languages can help you connect the dots in ways you hadn't considered before.
Absolutely. It made me realize that language isn't just about memorizing words and rules, it's about connecting with people. Whether it's in Spanish, English or any other language, the goal is to understand, be understood, and engage with others. The more languages you know, the more tools you have to connect with the world.
That's such a powerful way to think about it. You've taken your experiences with other languages and applied them to learning English, which shows how versatile and adaptable language skills can be. Do you think knowing multiple languages gives you an edge in understanding the nuances of a new language?
Definitely, knowing other languages has helped me see patterns and similarities in grammar and vocabulary. For example, as an English learner, it's easier for me to understand some of the sentence structures in other languages like German or French. Plus, I'm more open to figuring out meanings based on context, which is so important when learning any language.
That's an excellent point. Sometimes we get so focused on the rules that we forget how much we can learn by looking at context. And I think that's something a lot of learners overlook, how context can help us grasp the meaning of new words or phrases without memorizing them.
Exactly. In fact, I always tell learners that understanding a word in context is just as important as memorizing the definition. It's like building a puzzle. You may not have all the pieces, but as you immerse yourself more, the picture becomes clearer.
I love that analogy. The more pieces you gather, the clearer the picture becomes. And that's a perfect way to approach learning English, or any language really. It's a process of discovery that takes time.
Exactly. And I think another big thing to remember is that mistakes are part of the learning journey. Every mistake you make is just a chance to learn something new. And that's a key part of the process. When you look at it that way, the fear of making mistakes starts to fade away.
Yes, absolutely. We've talked about this before. But it's always worth repeating. Don't let the fear of making mistakes hold you back. The most successful language learners are the ones who embrace their mistakes and learn from them.
Exactly. I've made so many mistakes along the way, but I always try to laugh it off and move forward. Each mistake is like a lesson in disguise. Plus, when you get past that fear, you open yourself up to new experiences and new opportunities.
That's such a healthy mindset to have. And I think that's one of the best ways to maintain motivation, too. If you can shift your focus from avoiding mistakes to embracing them as part of your growth, you'll stay motivated much longer.
Absolutely. It's all about mindset. Once you start seeing mistakes as stepping stones rather than setbacks, it makes the entire learning process so much more enjoyable and less stressful.
Such great advice, Jacob. I'm sure everyone listening will feel a little more confident in their language learning journey after hearing this. Thank you so much for sharing your insights with us today.
It was my pleasure, Sophia. I hope everyone out there keeps learning, keeps growing, and enjoys the ride. Remember, it's not about perfection, it's about progress. Keep going, and you'll get there.
Absolutely. Thank you again, Jacob. And thank you to all our listeners for tuning in. Keep practicing, embrace those mistakes, and remember every little bit of progress counts. Until next time, take care.